Hey guys, it's me. I am home again with my baby, and I just wanted to check in and do some teaching to you because we have such a cool thing going with this portrait project. I didn't want to mess it up on day two. So bear with me. I'm going to get a screen share going here, and we should be good to go. I hope you can see that. So here's where we were yesterday, and I'm assuming that you guys are going to want to take this to the next level. Let me show you how that's done. I made, after class ended today, a few more moves on taking this to a kind of a more finished place. So here's what I did. Let me just remove this layer. And I'm sorry, this version of Photoshop is a little older than the one we're using in the studio, but the brushes are all the same. Up to this point, up to the point that you watched, use our first brush in the stack, and that's been great for everything. And I just used a smaller version of it to do some of the work here on the eye. But what I did next was I scrolled down to the 236 brush, which I absolutely love. But in this case, I'm going one step further to the brush just below it. And here I'm going to make a new layer and kind of show you what I'm talking about. This brush is by nature, or by default, a very small brush. I'm going to make it a fairly large brush. Let me sample from one of the lighter values here in my reference picture. And I'm going to start to brush in some marks. Let me make this even a little larger. I hope you can see in the video that kind of smoky, almost cloud-like texture that it creates. So between that brush there and the one just below it, at a pretty large setting, maybe in the 100 to 150 size, you can start to get some of that awesome texture that skin shows when there's a little bit of light on it. Let me zoom in one more step here. This is a little bit beyond 100%. You can start to see that speckled texture, which is a really nice finishing texture for skin. So there's the 22 brush enlarged, and here's the 20 brush enlarged, and you can see how both of these have a nice effect on what we're trying to do. Let me delete that layer, or just hide it for a second, and reveal the layer that I was working on earlier. So you can see here the difference between where I left you guys and what I did by adding some texture in using this 22 and 20 brush just enlarged quite a bit. Again, I'm not following the lines or shapes that I've created in the past. Each time I go back to work on adding value, on adding texture, on adding light, on whatever I'm trying to do, I revisit my shapes, I revisit my drawing, I revisit my proportion. In all cases, I'm using each new approach, each new step in the drawing as a way to tidy up basically my drawing, and to tidy up my proportions, and to tidy up my shapes, and to tidy up the portrait overall. So what you can see here is just a little bit of texture brush. This is the first time I've used anything other than our normal blocking brush. And the 236 and the 94 are both wonderful brushes, but there's just the ones below it, these two, that give you that nice speckled look. I love those. Let's do a little exploration. I didn't plan on doing this, but I think it'd be nice if we take a look together at how to handle some of the hair. So I'm going to just pull the illustration over here a little bit. I'm going to zoom in one layer of zoom on here, and we're a little bit past the point that this piece is supposed to be zoomed in on, so it's starting to get a little blocky. So maybe I will zoom back out. I'm going to grab the 236 brush, click back on my illustration layer. I'm going to make a new layer, and I'd like to try to bring in some of these highlights here. And you can see with this 236 brush, because the nature of the brush, it's got a little bit of this strand-like texture, which is what I'm looking for with the hair. The all-important thing when drawing the hair is initially we just talked about making it have shape. You know, we're just looking for the dark shapes and the light shapes, the mid-tone shapes, and the transitions between. But when you get to this point, at the end of the drawing, once you've done all the work you can do to make the shapes the right value, the shapes the right tones, basically, then you get to add some texture, then you get to add the detail work. So this 236 brush might be a decent brush for some of the hair. I think you got to be careful when you do this that it doesn't start looking like spaghetti hair. You know, you do want to have some of the strands in there, but you don't want to. Oh, and I had it on a mixer brush. No wonder it was getting a little funky. So let me go back to just my normal paintbrush. So the 236 will look a little bit like this. Let me put this layer on top, where you get to see some of the strands, but it has a little bit of meaty texture to it too, so that may or may not be your thing. This little brush, this 25, is good for individual strands, but I think I would go crazy if I drew an entire head of hair with that. There's this 125 brush, which, whoa, hold on one second, which does a good job of giving life again to sort of like bundles of strands, which is cool. But I think if you go overboard with it, it's going to start to look a little jank, so be careful of that. But as you kind of look down through here, you're going to see a lot of different effects brushes, which are only serve to kind of make things a little confusing. Be careful when getting down this far in our brush stack. These are most likely going to lead you astray. For what we're trying to do, some of these brushes at the top, the 93 is fine. This 95 is a rake-like brush, and it does have a strand-like texture to it. So if, again, I make this a little smaller, and we can take a look at, kind of putting this back on the shelf, how this compares to our reference image. I don't know if it compares too favorably at this point, but when we use maybe the rake brush in conjunction with this 93 that's got a lot of strand-like texture, and then maybe some of the others that I talked about, I think you could be in a good place. The thing you're going to need to do at some point is add a few of these very small individual strands. And you know, I would be really careful to not go overboard with something like this. Just like if you're ever painting a forest, you do not want to paint every tree. You just have to suggest the forest and give some detail to a few trees. Similarly with hair, you do not want to get too detailed. But you know, it can't hurt you to have a couple places where you throw in individual strands. You've got this nice little small brush here. You can even take our number 80 brush and take it down to a really fine point and add in some individual strands. That's totally your call. So that's hair. More important than that's probably the skin texture. And then at the very end of things, let me zoom out just a little bit so we can talk about this. I did jump ahead a little bit. I want to show you the mixer brush. And let me go back to my painting here. And let me do this. I'm going to merge this layer down, merge this layer down, and I'm just going to keep merging them down until I just have one layer. I could do that all at once by right-clicking and then saying flatten image or merge visible, but I just wanted to show you that over and over in case anyone was missing it. So here I have all the layers as one. For finishing work, I can grab the mixer brush and I'm going to go back to my number 80, and I can use this as a blending tool and a sample color that I want to start blending, and I can basically just start smudging all of these values together. This is really helpful for getting the fine tones blended together with some precision. It's a great drawing tool, but it's an excellent blending tool. So that's what I'm using it for, and you can see it start to take effect there already. You might want to employ that across the bridge of the nose where you have really soft value transitions and so on. So I'm probably taking enough of your drawing time already. I'd love to get you guys right into the action, but I wanted to make sure you were well equipped to handle what was on your plate today. Remember that what you're doing first is looking really closely at all the values and all the proportions. And once that's done, you can start getting into some detail work and some texture work. You can do that with some of those brushes which I showed you earlier, and then once you're done with that, you might come back and do a little blending brush work on some of your values. And once you've done that, you might even go back again for some texture work. That's going to depend on your workflow and kind of what your objective is with the piece. and what overall feel you'd like to accomplish. But I think what I've shown you so far just in yesterday and today is going to give you a good enough start on getting this thing done. I hope you have an awesome day, you guys. I definitely will miss being there. I love hanging out with you guys. You're an amazing and talented class. So best wishes and good luck.